During my lunch break, I found my wife with our neighbor in my very own bathtub. I saw them with my own eyes in the most intimate space of my home, and something inside me broke forever. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I locked them in there and called his wife to come home. That was the visible part of the story, the one anyone could tell as a scandalous anecdote. But what happened inside me while all that went down was far more profound. There are very specific moments in life that change you forever in the blink of an eye. Instants that act like a silent earthquake. They are those devastating seconds when everything you thought you knew about your world crumbles right in front of your face and you're left standing among the rubble, not yet knowing who you're going to be when the dust settles. Mine arrived on a completely ordinary Tuesday, one of those days you'd never circle on a calendar, when I decided to head back home to grab some documents I'd foolishly left on the dining table. Before I continue with this story, I'd love to know where you're listening from today. Drop your city or state in the comments because I'm fascinated to discover how far these life-changing stories travel, and how people who have never met can find themselves sharing the same pain, the same betrayal, or the same awakening. Maybe you're in your living room, on the subway, at your job, or about to fall asleep. Wherever you are, I want you to know you're not alone. Behind every screen, there's someone else who has also had a Tuesday that changed everything forever, even if on the outside it looked just like any other day. My name is Elias Holloway, and I was a 4-year-old man who sincerely believed he was living a near-perfect life, not rich in luxuries, but certainly full of a false sense of stability. I had been married for 8 years to Naomi, and we owned a beautiful split-level home in a quiet suburban development right outside the city. By then, we weren't just a couple building a future anymore. We had 2 young kids who filled the house with tossed-aside backpacks, drawings stuck to the fridge, and laughter echoing down the hall. For me, they were proof that everything was fine. The perfect excuse to tolerate any discomfort just to keep the image of a happy family intact. It was one of those subdivisions full of neatly manicured lawns, identical streetlights, and kids riding bikes at sunset. We had neighbors we considered close friends, people with whom we shared cookouts, Sunday football games, and hallway confidences. I worked as an insurance claims adjuster for a large firm. A job that might sound boring, but it gave me a strong sense of being useful and in control. My routine was predictable, comfortable, and safe, or so I believed. That morning, I had rushed out of the house like almost always. Naomi stayed behind in her home office, as she had been for the last 6 months since she started working remotely doing financial consulting. Her desk was set up in what used to be the guest room, now rebranded as her study. I was proud to say my wife worked from home, that she had flexibility, that she managed her own time. I like to imagine it was a sign of modern life. "See you tonight, love," Naomi called out from her study as I closed the front door without glancing up from my phone. I remember her distracted, almost automatic tone. I didn't think anything of it then. I mumbled a quick response, stuffing my keys into my pocket and thinking about traffic, the report I needed to submit, and the coffee cooling in my travel mug. Never in a million years would I have imagined those would be the last normal words we'd exchange. What I was about to discover when I returned home would not only destroy my marriage, but also completely shatter the image I had of myself as a husband, a friend, a man. My life until that point was like a well-oiled machine, precise, organized, and without incident. Every morning at 6:30, I'd brew the coffee while Naomi showered. We'd eat breakfast together in front of the morning news, commenting on headlines without any real depth, as if life were made up of small, risk-free routines. I'd drive to the office, and she'd stay in her makeshift study, handling video calls and sending emails. At least that's what I believed. Weekends were practically a ritual. Grocery runs, visits to her parents or mine, dinner with friends, and Sunday football games with Marcus, our next-door neighbor, who had gradually become almost part of the family. We lived in a 2-story house on a well-kept cul-de-sac, the kind where kids play safely and neighbors greet each other by name. I had chosen every piece of furniture, every paint color, and every decorative detail with almost obsessive care. I remember the first time we walked in, the walls still smelling of fresh paint and boxes piled everywhere. Naomi was spinning around, imagining where the artwork would go, while I was thinking in practical terms, where the sofa would fit best, what kind of curtains would retain the least dust. That house was my sanctuary, the place where I felt safest in the world, the concrete symbol that we were doing things right as an adult couple. The neighbors had become almost an extension of our family, especially Marcus Vance, who lived directly across the street with his wife Simone and their 2 young children. We'd become fast friends since they moved in 3 years prior. I remember the first time I saw them unloading boxes, him sweating while lugging heavy furniture, and her patiently organizing everything with a tired smile. That day, as a good neighbor, I crossed the street with a pitcher of iced lemonade and offered to help. I never thought that simple act would open the door to the worst pain of my life. Since then, we'd watch games on Sundays, organize barbecues in the backyard, and lend each other tools when one of us was doing repairs. When they traveled, I'd feed their dog. When we traveled, Simone would collect our mail. I trusted Marcus completely. More than a neighbor, I considered him a friend. A man who listened to me talk about my work concerns, who gave me pats on the back and made jokes about how heavy adult life gets. I trusted Naomi completely. She was my wife, my life partner, the woman I had made plans with for 10, 20 years. I trusted my life completely. That blind trust turned out to be my biggest mistake and, paradoxically, the source of my greatest gift, the awakening I didn't know I needed. Still, that morning, there was something in the air that didn't fit, even before everything exploded. Naomi seemed more distracted than usual at breakfast. She stirred her coffee without tasting it, and checked her phone constantly, as if waiting for a message. When I asked her if everything was okay, she gave me a tight smile and said she had a complicated morning of calls ahead. She downplayed the matter, made a comment about a demanding client, and changed the subject. I, who had always been an expert at justifying other people's behavior, let it go. I preferred to think she was just stressed. I drove to the office with a strange knot in my stomach. That vague feeling that something isn't right but you can't name it. Throughout the morning, while reviewing policies and processing claims, I couldn't shake that sticky unease. I called Naomi to see if we could grab lunch together, something we didn't do very often on weekdays, and the line was busy. I tried again, and the same thing. I told myself she must be on a video call, that it was nothing, that there was no point in being paranoid. Then, while reviewing files for an important afternoon meeting, I realized I'd left essential documents at home, the blue folder that always went with me. I had no choice. I had to go back for them. I told my boss I needed an hour to deal with a personal matter, and he, trusting my responsibility, gave me the green light without asking too many questions. The drive from the office to my house took barely 15 minutes. A route I knew by heart. I thought it would be a matter of walking in, grabbing the papers, maybe a quick bite with Naomi, and heading back. Perhaps we could even grab lunch together, giving her a break from her complicated morning. Life, however, has a cruel way of laughing at our simplest plans. Arriving home, the first thing I saw was Marcus's SUV parked in my driveway. Marcus always parked in front of his house, right across the street. It was almost an unwritten rule between us, each in his own zone. Seeing his car there was like seeing a chair out of place in a perfectly ordered room. A minimal detail, but odd enough to make you frown. That's weird, I thought. Maybe he was helping Naomi with something heavy or fixing something in the bathroom. I told myself the excuses to reassure me came automatically, as if my mind were programmed to shield me from the truth. I opened the door with my key, and the silence hit me instantly. Too much silence. Naomi always played music while she worked. Soft jazz playlists with raspy voice singers or some podcast in the background. If Marcus was there, the normal thing would have been to hear laughter, conversation, the clatter of mugs in the kitchen. But the house was silent. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the entrance and felt the air grow denser, as if the house knew something I didn't yet. Naomi, I called from the hallway, trying to keep my voice normal. No one answered. I went to the kitchen thinking maybe they were in the backyard, but there was no trace of them. The breakfast dishes were still in the sink, breadcrumbs on the placemats, and Naomi's half-empty cup of coffee was cold. Marcus's shoes weren't by the entrance, as was his custom when he visited. He always took them off out of respect for the hardwood floor, he'd say. Everything was too intact, too frozen, like a photograph. Then I heard something that chilled my blood. The sound of running water in the master bathroom. The bathroom I had shared with Naomi for 8 years. At first, my brain searched for the most innocent, logical explanation. Maybe Naomi was showering before a video call, or maybe she had wanted to take advantage of me being gone. But Marcus's car was still in the driveway. Where was he? Why was his car there if he wasn't anywhere to be found? The questions multiplied as I climbed the stairs, feeling the pressure in my chest increase with every step. I went up with a pounding heart, trying to cling to any reasonable explanation. Maybe Marcus came to ask for something urgent, and Naomi offered him our bathroom because his was broken. Maybe there was an emergency, and he needed to shower for some absurd reason. I don't know yet. My mind desperately clung to any alternative that would keep my world intact. I was an expert at that, at justifying, minimizing, and not seeing what was right in front of my eyes. I walked down the hall to our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and the sound of water was louder, a constant murmur filling the silence. Then I heard it, a muffled whisper, a low laugh, a phrase I didn't quite catch, but whose tone was unmistakable. Intimacy. My hand trembled as I got closer. One part of my brain begged me to stop, to turn around, to go back to the office and pretend I had never returned. "Don't open that door," a deep voice inside me whispered, because deep down, I already knew that what I was about to find on the other side would change everything. But there was another part of me, quieter but firm, that needed to know the truth, even if it hurt. That part won. I put my hand on the doorknob, took a deep breath, and pushed gently, as if everything were happening in slow motion, as if someone had turned down the volume of the world. The slight squeak of the hinge sounded like thunder in my ears. What I saw on the other side was not just a betrayal. It was the death of the man I had been until that moment. There is no way to prepare for the moment your reality completely dissolves. There they were, Naomi and Marcus in my bathtub, in my house, in my sanctuary. The water poured over their shoulders, creating a kind of curtain between them and the rest of the world. Their bodies were intertwined, completely oblivious to everything but their own pleasure. He held her waist with a familiarity that isn't learned in a single instance. She caressed the back of his neck with one hand, as she often did with me, while the other rested on the edge of the tub. Marcus's hands moved over my wife's body with a confidence that could only mean one thing. This wasn't the first time. They were kissing with a passion I hadn't seen in Naomi for years. That detail, more than any other, was what truly broke something inside me. I realized suddenly that they weren't just cheating on me. They had moved a secret life that excluded me into my bathroom, into my home. For a few seconds, I stood paralyzed. My brain refused to process what my eyes saw. It was like watching someone else's movie, something that couldn't be real, that couldn't belong to my orderly life. Then Marcus opened his eyes. It took him a couple of seconds to focus his gaze and realize I was standing in the doorway. His face went from desire to pure horror. His hands froze on Naomi's body as if time had stopped. She followed the direction of his eyes, and when she saw me, all the color drained from her face. "Elias," she murmured, as if saying my name could erase what had just been exposed. In that moment, something inside me broke, but it wasn't what I expected. I didn't feel the explosion of a broken heart, the urge to throw things, or the desire to hit anyone. What broke were the invisible chains of the submissive, trusting man I had been until then. It was as if someone had violently ripped a blindfold from my eyes. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse as they surely expected. A strange, almost unnatural calm took hold of me. It was as if I had stepped out of my own body and was watching the scene from above, like an investigator instead of the betrayed husband. I watched them for a few more seconds, etching every detail into my memory. The towel thrown on the floor, the clothes carelessly piled up, the steam fogging the mirror where Naomi and I had seen ourselves 1,000 times together. "Stay exactly where you are," I said in a voice I didn't recognize as mine. Cold, controlled, firm. Marcus tried to stand up in the tub, stumbling awkwardly. "Elias, wait. Can I explain?" "Not a move," I repeated, and there was something in my tone that stopped him dead in his tracks. I didn't yell, but my voice was charged with an authority I had never used. I slammed the bathroom door shut, feeling the vibration in the palm of my hand, and turned the lock from the outside. The click of the lock echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. "Elias, what are you doing?" Naomi's voice sounded desperate on the other side of the door, mixed with the noise of the water still running. "Stay in there and think about what you've done," I replied, surprising myself with the coldness of my words. Meanwhile, am going to make some calls." I went to my nightstand, picked up my phone with fingers that weren't trembling as much as they had moments before, and looked for a number in my contacts. A number I had dialed hundreds of times for trivial things, inviting them to dinner, asking for sugar, commenting on a game score, offering to watch the kids. It was the number for Simone, Marcus's wife. I had never dialed it for something like this. Her name glowed on the screen with hurtful normalcy. I pressed call. Simone answered on the second ring as if fate didn't want to give me time to regret it. "Hey, Elias, how are you?" Her voice sounded warm, familiar, oblivious to the disaster she was about to face. "Hello, Simone," I replied with the same terrifying calm. "I need you to come to my house right now. There's something you need to see. It's important." There was a small silence. "Is everything okay?" she asked, worried. "No," I answered with brutal honesty. "But you'll understand when you get here. Come right in. The door will be unlocked." While I waited for Simone to arrive, I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed Naomi and I had shared for so many nights. Some happy, others filled with uncomfortable silences that now took on a different meaning. I let the reality hit me with its full force, slowly. The signs had been there all along. Like small cracks in a wall, I chose not to look at. Naomi working from home more and more. Her trips to the gym getting longer. The way she recently hid her phone when I approached. The private laughs with Marcus at friend gatherings. The texts she never showed me because they were work stuff. Desperate whispers and soft thumps came from the bathroom. "Elias, please. This is crazy." Naomi yelled, "Let us out, and we can talk like adults." Adults? The word made me let out a bitter laugh. Adults were those who slept with the neighbor in their own husband's house. Adults were those who built elaborate lies for months. My phone vibrated. A text from Simone. "Left work. I will be there in 15 minutes. Is something seriously wrong?" she wrote. I replied, "Yes, but I can't explain it by text. Come straight in." In those minutes of waiting, I did something I had never done. I checked Naomi's phone. She had left it on the nightstand when she went to shower. I had never asked for her passcode because I simply didn't need it. After 8 years of marriage, we believed in total transparency. What an irony. I swiped the screen and opened her messaging app. Part of me still expected to find only work conversations, jokes with friends, unimportant stuff. But reality didn't take long to show its face. What I found there confirmed that the betrayal was much deeper than I had imagined. The messages between Naomi and Marcus dated back more than 6 months, maybe longer. 6 months of good morning, handsome, and I can't stop thinking about you. 6 months of photos, private jokes, innuendo. 6 months of meticulous plans to see each other when I was away. Shared alibis, details only two deeply involved people would exchange. 6 months of laughing about how naive I was, how easy it was to fool me. "Elias is so innocent," Naomi had written in one of the messages. "I think we could do it in the living room, and he wouldn't even notice." "That's what I love about you," Marcus replied. "That, unlike him, you're daring, spontaneous, fun. He's just so predictable." I felt a sharp punch to the gut, a physical pain. But the message that truly devastated me was from only 2 days earlier. "Do you think we should tell them?" Naomi asked. "Sometimes I feel guilty about Simone. She's a really good person." "No, not yet," Marcus replied. "I need to make sure Elias doesn't walk away with half of everything when I divorce her. Give me a few more weeks. I want things to go smoothly for us." I read that message 3 times before the words finally sank in. They weren't just cheating. They were planning to financially ruin me, dismantle my future, my stability, my years of work. It wasn't a slip-up. It was a project. The doorbell rang. Simone had arrived. I went downstairs with trembling legs, clutching Naomi's phone as if it were the main evidence in a trial. Through the entry window, I saw Simone on the porch, her brow furrowed, visibly worried. She was wearing her office uniform, a folder under her arm, and her hair pulled back in a hurried bun. I could imagine her rushing out of a meeting, slamming her laptop shut, not even closing her documents just because I had said, "It's important." I opened the door and saw her up close. Her eyes showed genuine concern. "Elias, what's going on? You sounded really serious on the phone." "Is everything okay?" she repeated, although the answer was already obvious on my face. For a moment, I hesitated. As soon as I spoke the words, there would be no going back. Simone's life would also break into pieces. Her children would have to face separation, divorce, a new version of their father. But she deserved the truth as much as I did. "Simone," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "Marcus is here at my house with my wife. I caught them together in the bathtub." I watched as my words took a few seconds to register. Her expression shifted from concern to confusion, then to disbelief, and finally to a painful understanding that I recognized instantly because I had just gone through the exact same process. "Together?" she asked, although deep down she already knew what I meant. "Together," I repeated, "without clothes, in my bathroom. I locked them in. They're upstairs." Simone put a hand to her forehead as if she were suddenly in pain. Her lips trembled, but she made a visible effort to maintain her composure. We walked up the stairs slowly, as if each step were a sentence. When we reached the master bedroom hallway, she leaned her full weight against the doorframe as if her legs could no longer support her. "Since when?" she murmured almost voicelessly. I placed Naomi's phone in her hand without saying a word. She began to scroll through the screen, reading the conversation from top to bottom. According to what we had just seen, this had been going on for at least 6 months, maybe longer. As Simone read, I watched her world crumble in real time. She had the same vacant look I must have had 20 minutes earlier, that devastating mixture of disbelief, rage, and disgust. That feeling of realizing that the life she thought was solid was actually pure quicksand. "Oh my God," she whispered, raising a trembling hand to her mouth. "What about the kids? Elias, how am I going to explain this to the kids?" It was the first time since I opened the bathroom door that I saw someone else cross the sharp edge of that pain. Strangely, it made me feel less alone in my nightmare. We went down to the living room because we both needed to physically distance ourselves from our respective spouses. We sat on my beige sofa, surrounded by framed photos that now seemed to mock us. Naomi and I, cutting our wedding cake, the 4 of us on a trip to South Beach, Miami. Both families in matching Christmas pajamas making ridiculous faces. "I need to understand," Simone said, her voice broken. "When did all this start? How could I have been so blind?" We placed the phone between us and began scrolling back through the conversation, piecing together the map of their betrayal. The first romantic exchange was from the night of a dinner at our house. I remembered it perfectly. We laughed, played cards, and finished off several bottles of wine. I thought it had been a lovely evening among friends. According to the texts, the real story had begun when Simone and I went to bed. Naomi walked Marcus out to the door, and that's where they crossed the line. A kiss on the porch, while our children slept upstairs, and his wife trusted him. The messages detailed meetings in cheap budget motels off I-75 during my work hours, quick encounters in Marcus's car parked in dark areas, and even dates in my own house on days when I had full-day meetings. Every message was another stab, but also a piece of the puzzle. "Look at this," Simone said, pointing to a specific date. "Last Saturday, I took the kids to the zoo because Marcus said he had an extra shift at the hospital." My heart sank. That same Saturday, Naomi told me she was going to brunch with some college friends. She came back exhausted, but happy to have unplugged. I thought she'd had a good time. In reality, they had perfected the art of deception. They provided alibis for each other, covered for each other. They congratulated themselves on how well they were pulling it off. What hurt the most wasn't just the physical act, but the cold calculation. Naomi had spent months researching loopholes in our state's divorce laws, looking for the best way to protect her retirement plan, asking lawyer friends how to hide money in cryptocurrency. Marcus sent her links about dividing assets and child support. Among the most recent messages, we found something that changed the atmosphere of the room from sad to truly chilling. "I found the perfect house," Marcus wrote. 3 bedrooms, so the kids can visit. It's in a highly sought-after school district in case we decide to fight for custody. "Perfect," Naomi replied. "As soon as I'm rid of Elias, and you're rid of Simone, we'll start our real life. No secrets, no lies, just us." Simone read that message aloud, with a tone charged with a cutting bitterness. "No lies," she repeated, staring at the floor. After 6 months of nothing but lies, they want to build a relationship based on the truth. And there was more. Naomi told Marcus intimate details about me, my insecurities, my fears, my doubts about my job, even things I had confessed to her in moments of vulnerability. Convinced they remained within the confines of our marriage, Marcus mocked me. He felt superior, using my own intimacy as a weapon. "They're using you," I told Simone quietly. "They're using both of us as a private joke." In that instant, I saw something change in her eyes. The pain hardened, turning into cold determination. "You know what?" she said, standing up. "It's time to go up and have a conversation." We climbed the stairs together, shoulder to shoulder, two distinct people, united by the same betrayal. It was strange. Just an hour ago, Simone was my neighbor, my friend's wife. Now, she was my ally, my reflection, my living proof that I wasn't crazy. When we reached the main bedroom hallway, the sounds coming from the bathroom had changed. They were no longer pleading whispers, but a shouting match. "This is your fault," Naomi spat on the other side. "You told me he never came home for lunch on Tuesdays." "My fault?" Marcus retorted. "You insisted on today. We could have waited for tonight like always." "I'm tired of waiting," she shrieked. "I'm tired of cheap motels. You said you'd have the papers ready by now." Simone and I exchanged a look. Even trapped, they were still blaming each other instead of taking responsibility, as if we were the ones to blame for arriving at the wrong time. "Elias, I know you're out there," Naomi yelled. "We can resolve this civilly. Let us out and we can talk like adults." Simone took a step toward the door, her shadow stretching across the wood. "Marcus," she said with the gravest, firmest voice I had ever heard her use. "It's Simone. I think you and my husband have a lot of explaining to do." The silence that followed was almost physical. "Simone," Marcus's voice sounded tiny, scared. "Sweetheart, let me explain." "I'm waiting," she replied with a chilling calm. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. Simone let out a dry, sharp laugh. "Marcus, you are naked in our neighbor's bathtub with his wife. Please explain to me what part of that isn't what it looks like." Then Naomi spoke, and what she said froze us. "Elias, Simone, you have to understand that this is more complicated than it seems." She began as if giving a lecture. "Marcus and I fell in love. It wasn't planned. It just happened." Fell in love. That word was like gasoline on a fire. They had fallen in love while looking us in the face every day and lying without batting an eye. While they ate at our table, played with our children, and posed in our photos. We knew it was complicated. Naomi continued almost in the tone of a victim. But we couldn't control how we felt. "We wanted to tell you. We were just waiting for the right moment." I pounded the door with my fist. The explosion echoed throughout the house. "The right moment?" I roared. "You mean after you signed the contract for that house you already looked at? After making sure I wouldn't get a dime in the divorce? After deciding whether Simone's kids were going to live with you or not?" The silence on the other side was the confirmation. "How do you know that?" Naomi whispered. "Texts," I replied simply. "Very detailed, very revealing texts." What followed was a chorus of desperate excuses. It wasn't that serious. The romance blossomed because the marriage was already dead. We had made mistakes too. Naomi claimed the messages were taken out of context. Marcus insisted he never seriously planned to take Simone's children away. They tried to reduce the magnitude of what we had seen to something small enough to be forgiven. But Simone and I had already crossed another threshold. We weren't listening to their sanitized versions. We were clinging to the facts. "Elias," Simone suddenly said in a low voice. "Your phone has a voice recorder app." I nodded, instantly understanding. "Perfect. I think you should record some of these confessions for the lawyers." I opened the app, pressed the red button, and put the phone close to the door. "Naomi, Marcus," I said in a clear voice. "Could you repeat the part about how you're in love and have been planning to leave your families for months? Don't be shy. Our lawyers are going to love hearing this." The panic in their voices when they understood the implications was the sweetest sound I heard that year. We kept them going for a while longer, making them acknowledge dates, encounters, and moving plans. When I had enough, I saved the recording to the cloud. Simone did the same with her phone. We had switched roles. We were no longer unarmed victims. We went down to the living room again, leaving them locked in with their fears. We sat down. Two people who had completely different lives that morning, now sharing the same ruin. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was the silence of people who no longer need to pretend. "So, what do we do now?" Simone asked me, her eyes still red. For the first time since I turned the doorknob, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but a smile of recognition of something new. "Now," I said, checking my phone's battery, "we give them exactly what they deserve." A kind of operation to rescue our own lives began. First, I called my lawyer. I told her the essentials. I had texts, audio, a timeline. She listened in silence and finally just said, "Emote, this is courtroom gold. Don't worry, we're going to do things right." Simone called her attorney, a man she knew through work, but had never imagined hiring for herself. He too was confident in her chances of securing child custody and a fair settlement. Then came the more difficult calls. Naomi's mother answered with her usual loving voice. "Elias, honey, so good to hear you. How are you all?" I swallowed. "I need to tell you something about your daughter," I said, and my voice broke for just a second. "And why you had to watch the kids yesterday while she claimed to be sick." What followed was a contained sob on the other end of the line, a mix of disappointment and pain that, strange as it seems, also hurt me. I took no joy in destroying the image a mother had of her daughter, but I wasn't willing to keep upholding a lie that was killing me. Simone, for her part, called Marcus's boss. She explained that their star technician had spent months inventing medical appointments to meet up with a married woman. The man on the other end reacted with professional fury. "That is a serious lapse in ethics and responsibility," he said. "Thank you for informing us. There will be consequences." As we made these calls, the noise from the bathroom changed. It went from pleas to veiled threats, then to emotional blackmail. "Elias, please," Naomi screamed. 8 years of marriage have to mean something. We can go to therapy. We can fix this. "Simone, I'm still your husband," Marcus cried. "Think about the kids. Don't destroy our family over a mistake." A mistake? Calling 6 months of meticulously planned alibis a mistake almost made me laugh. "You know what?" I said to Simone after hanging up the last call. "I think it's time to let them out." She looked at me, weighing my words. "Are you sure?" "Completely," I replied. "But first, we have to set the stage." We went upstairs again, but we weren't the same people. There was something in us that hadn't existed before, an awareness of our strength. We stood in front of the bathroom door. Inside, the silence was almost absolute. I could imagine Naomi and Marcus sitting on the edge of the tub, wrapped in towels, trying to put together a version of the story that would cast them as victims. Before I turned the key, I looked at Simone. "I want you to know something," I told her. "No matter what happens from now on, this day changed me forever. And not just because of what they did, but because of what I discovered about myself." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but her back was straight. "Me too," she whispered. "I thought I would fall apart, but here I am." I reached into my jeans pocket and wrapped my fingers around the cold metal of the key. It was the same key I had turned earlier to lock them in, an almost instinctive act of defense. But now, clutching it meant something else. It was no longer just a lock. It was a conscious decision to open one door and close another, to end one chapter and begin one that still scared me, but that I was ready to face. I took a deep breath. "Naomi, Marcus," I said in a firm voice, "you're coming out now, but you need to understand that the rules have completely changed." I turned the key. The click sounded in the silent house like another detonation. I stepped aside. The door opened slowly. With the shower steam still suspended in the air, 2 people emerged who were no longer the confident lovers I had seen in the tub. Marcus was first. Wrapped in one of our white towels, his eyes red and swollen, his jaw clenched. Naomi followed, holding another towel against her body, trembling. I don't know if she was shaking from the cold or from the sudden awareness of everything she had just lost. She took a step toward me, as she had done for years when seeking comfort, but I backed away. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. "You have no right to touch me ever again." Simone stood beside me, straight as a column. Marcus tried to speak. "Simone, please let me explain." She raised her hand, cutting him off completely. "There's nothing to explain," she said. "You explained everything in a text message. You explained it every time you mocked us. You explained it when you planned to move in with her without lies. We had seen them naked in every sense, not just without clothes, but without their masks. We had seen them plead, lie, and justify themselves. And in that moral nakedness, they no longer held any power. "Sit," I ordered, pointing to the edge of the king-sized bed that Naomi and I had shared for nearly a decade. "Sit down, because now you are going to listen to what's going to happen." They sat in a row like two students, waiting for a reprimand. For the first time in 8 years, Naomi didn't argue. She didn't take control of the conversation. Simone and I had it. I started by walking slowly in front of them. "You are going to get dressed and leave my house immediately. Naomi, you can return tomorrow for some essential items, but you will only enter accompanied by the police or a neutral witness. I am changing the locks today. This house is no longer your playground." I watched her face fall apart. For years, she had been the one making the big decisions. That dynamic was dead. Second, our lawyers are already informed of everything. We have texts, audio, dates, screenshots. Everything is saved to the cloud and backed up. "Naomi, your plan to leave me with nothing has become your worst legal nightmare." "Elias, surely we can reach a civil agreement," she stammered. "Without lawyers, we can." "Civil?" I cut her off. "Civil is spending 6 months laughing at me while planning how to ruin my financial future. Civil is using my home as a motel. No. Now, we're going to do things correctly, not your way." Simone took the floor, directing her gaze at Marcus. "Marcus, your mother already knows why you've needed so much help with the kids lately. Your boss knows why you were making urgent exits from work, and our children will know when the time is right that their mother did everything she could to keep this family together while their father chose to burn it all down." "You can't turn the children against us," he protested desperately. "I don't need to," Simone replied. "Your actions speak for themselves." Then I approached Naomi close enough to see the fear in her eyes. "Do you know what hurts me the most about all this?" I asked in a very low voice. She swallowed. "It's not that you cheated on me. It's not that you tried to rob me. It's not even that you used our room as the setting for your affair." I paused. I felt my words settling. "What hurts me the most is that you completely underestimated me. For 8 years, you treated me as if I were weak, as if I were a fool, as if I would never catch on. Your whole plan depended on me continuing to be the distracted husband you invented. But I'm not. I never was. I was just asleep." I turned my head toward Marcus. "And you, Marcus, you sat on my sofa, ate my food, played with my children, called me your friend while planning this. You laughed at my innocence in texts. And now look at you, half-dressed, no secure house, no stable job, no perfect plan." The transformation was complete. I was no longer the man of that morning. I was someone who had found his voice. "Now," I said with a firmness no one had ever heard from me before, "you will get dressed, you will leave my house, and you will never come back. Everything that happens from here on will be discussed with lawyers. Your story began with lies and ends with consequences. Ours, Simone's and mine, starts today, even if it is among the ruins." Simone turned to Marcus. "You have 1 hour to pack a suitcase with the essentials and leave our house, too," she decreed. "I'll discuss the rest with my attorney." When they finally crossed the front door, small and defeated, the house was submerged in a different kind of silence. It wasn't the heavy silence of shock. It was a silence full of space, of possibility. Simone and I stood in the living room, surrounded by photo toys, folded blankets, the remnants of a family life that no longer existed. "How do you feel?" she asked me, looking me in the eyes. I took a few seconds before answering. I listened to my own breathing, the ticking of the clock, the distant murmur of a television in another house. "I feel like I've been born again," I said with an honesty that surprised me. "Like I've been sleepwalking for years and I finally woke up." Simone smiled, tired but sincere. "Me too. I should be screaming, crying, throwing things. And yet, I feel stronger than I have in a long time." She was right. The betrayal, brutal as it was, became the catalyst we needed to discover who we really were. We weren't the supporting characters in their lives, nor the naive targets of their private jokes. We were people capable of making decisions, setting boundaries, and rebuilding. That night, after Simone went back to her house to talk to her children and her mother, I was alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I walked through every room one by one, turning off lights, moving things, taking down a photo or two. It was as if I was reclaiming my territory. The following months were about total reconstruction. The divorce I had imagined would be long and painful turned out to be quicker and less complicated thanks to the mountain of evidence Naomi had left in her wake. She couldn't impose conditions. She couldn't hide assets. She couldn't rewrite the story to present herself as a victim. For the first time since I met her, reality was completely on my side. I kept the house and acceptable financial stability, and most importantly, my dignity intact. But the most important victory was neither legal nor financial. It was personal. Every day without Naomi was a day I rediscovered who I was, free from her constant criticism, free from her comments disguised as jokes about my clothes, my job, my way of being. I realized I had spent years shrinking myself to fit into the version of a man she had in her head. I stopped doing that. I signed up for abstract painting classes, something I had always wanted to try and that she considered a waste of time. The first time I put a brush to a canvas, I felt a freedom I hadn't known. I took a solo trip down the California coast with no strict agenda, stopping wherever I felt like it. I sat in front of the ocean, watching the sunset, listening to the roar of the waves, and for the first time in a long time, the noise inside my head calmed down. I met new people who knew nothing of my past. People who saw me just as Elias, not as Naomi's husband. Simone and I maintained a strange but beautiful friendship, woven with threads of pain and brutal honesty. We supported each other through hearings, signings, difficult conversations with the kids, and with our families. She also blossomed after her divorce. She started therapy, became more involved in her children's school, and resumed hobbies she had abandoned years ago. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch, each with a mug of coffee, and laugh about small things, aware of how far we had come since that Tuesday. 1 year after it happened, I started calling that date the awakening. I ran into Naomi at the grocery store. I saw her before she saw me in the produce aisle. She looked more tired with new expression lines around her mouth. I knew from comments from others that her relationship with Marcus hadn't survived the guilt, the shame, and the financial consequences of their choices. When our carts came face to face, she looked up. "Elias," she said uncomfortably, "I wanted to tell you, I'm sorry for everything." I observed her for a few seconds. I searched inside myself for any spark of love, hatred, or resentment. I found nothing, only indifference, a quiet void. "I know," I replied, "but I don't need your forgiveness, Naomi. Your betrayal gave me the greatest gift you could give me. It showed me who I really am." Today, as I tell you this story, 2 years have passed since that Tuesday that changed the course of my life. My house is completely renovated. I painted the walls, changed the furniture, and hung my own artwork. But the most important changes aren't visible. They're in the atmosphere. It's no longer the scene of an emotional crime, but a place where I learned to respect myself, where I learned to sleep peacefully, where I once again invited trusted people to dinner without fear that they would destroy my life while I wasn't looking. The betrayal didn't define me. My response to that betrayal defined me. I've learned that sometimes the most devastating moments are actually the most liberating. Sometimes everything has to fall apart so you can see who you are without the masks, without the roles that others assigned you. My marriage ended. My trust was abused. And for a while, I felt like my life had been turned upside down. But clearing the rubble, I found something I never had before. A version of myself that was complete, aware, and brave. To anyone listening to this who feels lost in their own life, who feels invisible or undervalued, who thinks they don't have the strength to change their situation, I want to tell you something from the heart. Your strength is there, even if you can't see it right now. Sometimes it wakes up with a terrible Tuesday, with devastating news, with an "I don't love you anymore" that breaks you in two. I won't lie to you. It hurts. It hurts more than you think you can bear. But on the other side of that pain is something more. Something you can't see at first. The possibility of starting anew, of writing your own story without chains. My story isn't about revenge, although there were moments of justice. It's about rebirth. It's about how, when you think you've lost everything, you might actually be about to win everything. The betrayal gave me my freedom, and my freedom gave me my true life. If this story touched your heart, if it made you look at your own life with different eyes or reminded you that you deserve respect, then it will have fulfilled its purpose. It's been a true pleasure having you here and being able to share this journey with you. Tell me in the comments what city you are listening from and what time it is there. I'm always excited to see where all the wonderful people who accompany me are connecting from. Take good care of yourself and never forget that you deserve a life where you are treated with truth and dignity.